Hello, everybody. You're listening to J Movie Talk, episode 343, as I am kicking off the month of July. So, with this month, I decided to do things a little different. If you listen to the last episode, you heard me kind of give the rundown for what I was going to kick the month off with, and I wanted to kick it off with a bang in a way. So, I decided, why not spotlight a filmmaker, and what better filmmaker to talk about than one Mr. Spike Lee. He's been someone that I've wanted to talk about on the podcast for a long time, and I didn't know exactly when I would want to do it. I have reviewed a few of his movies and everything, but as far as going like deep into talking about my connection to him as a filmmaker overall, I haven't really done that necessarily. I've talked more about the movies that I've reviewed of his, mainly like Mo Better Blues. Also, I did an episode where I did Do the Right Thing and everything. But there are a few of his movies that I do actually still want to review in total, and everything. But this episode, I just wanted to, talk about a polarizing figure, and someone that I actually have a kind of love-hate relationship with when it comes to his movies. And I will dive more into that as I go through his career and talk about his films and everything like that. But for me, when it comes to Spike Lee, and when I first started watching his movies, I was actually a young kid, like the early 90s. Do the Right Thing was always on TV quite a bit. School Days was on quite a bit as well. Of course, I saw Malcolm X, and everything, and I will talk a lot about that movie in particular, because I feel like that is when certain things kind of transpires with Spike Lee in general. But he was always somewhat of a staple as far as movies that I watch. I mean, I saw He Got Game at the movie theater, and everything. So, and come to think of it, that is, I think, the only movie of his I actually saw at the movie theater. I can't remember if I saw Inside Man at the movie theater or not, or whatever. But like I say, he's always been someone that I would say I admire his work. Some of his work, I should say, I do admire him. I think he is an important filmmaker, and also too the fact that he's a black filmmaker and someone that I kind of see a little bit of myself when I see him and like certain topics that he, put out in his films. I'd see, like, if I was a filmmaker, like, I probably would touch those topics as well, to a certain degree, and maybe in a different way, but I would still approach those topics, nonetheless, and everything. So, for this episode, if you haven't listened to how I talk about filmmakers on the podcast, I pretty much run through their entire career and, talk about how certain movies are important to me, and, just kind of go through talking about said filmmaker and how they kind of resonate with me, and then how certain films of theirs resonate, with me and everything. It's been a while since I actually spotlighted a filmmaker and everything. So that's another reason why I kind of wanted to do this episode. And like I said, who better than to talk about Spike Lee, right? So let's get into his filmography real quick. So, of course, it starts in 1986. Ironically, the year that I was born, with a little movie called She's Gotta Have It. Now, I've only seen parts of She's Gotta Have It. I've never actually sat and watched the whole entire thing, and I'm pretty sure people are probably like, well, what are you doing with yourself? I know it's on Netflix. I mean, the TV series is also on Netflix, and I probably should watch both. And I probably will at some point. And everything. But She's Gotta Have It is, like I said, that's his first film. Film that pretty much started the whole Spike Lee run, and everything. And like I said, I because I haven't really watched the movie in total, I can't really speak too much on it. I mean, I'm well aware of the movie, and also too, thanks to that movie is why we got the character of Mars Blackman, who plays a role in Michael Jordan and the Nike commercials, like no Mars, that whole thing, right? So, and like I say, I understand the cultural impact and how he burst on the scene with this movie as a auteur, in a way, and everything like that. And I mean, also around this time is when he forms his production company, 40 Acres and a Mule, and all that good stuff, and how he pretty much he showed New York through a different lens, because I think by around that time, I mean, you had Scorsese doing movies that kind of focused on a certain aspect of New York. The Abel Ferreras, showed a certain aspect of New York. Woody Allen showed a certain aspect of New York. But Spike Lee, he kind of brought a different lens, a better, I wouldn't say necessarily a better lens, but a different perspective lens to New York, especially the Bed-Stuy, the Harlems, Brooklyn areas of New York, that in other movies prior, and everything like that, where those areas pretty much kind of shown in a certain way, but Spike put a different twist and spin on them, to actually like, no, these are kind of cool, interesting places from the right perspective, and everything. So, I mean, like I said, that's pretty much where his career starts. 1986. Then we fast forward a few years to 1988 with his second movie. We get School Days, which stars Lawrence Fishburne, Giancarlo Esposito, Tisha Campbell, Kadeem Hardison, Bill Nunn, Ozzie Davis, Samuel L. Jackson shows up for like 2 seconds. Because matter of fact, this is the first of a few appearances that Samuel L. Jackson makes in Spike Lee movies, and is dealing with Mission College, which is a fictional black college, and basically is kind of going off of certain Spike Lee experiences at because he went to a HBCU, so how he viewed college and an experience and everything like that. And I enjoy School Days. I always like to refer to it as like it's almost like a different version of Higher Learning in a way, because you could almost say that DAP pretty much turned into the professor in Higher Learning, just he ended up with a Caribbean accent or whatever. But yeah, I like I said, I always kind of have fun with School Days, and I do see a bit of myself in the DAP character, especially in, I want to say, like my late 20s. I very much was kind of somewhat like DAP in a way. And I mean that from the standpoint of just being headstrong and if I have a mission, I anybody who kind of goes against it, if you're not with me, you're against me type of way. And so I could definitely relate quite a bit to the DAP character. And my favorite scene in that movie actually is the scene at the KFC where DAP and his crew, they trying to eat and everything, but then you got Sam Jackson and his crew with the Jerry curl bags all on their head, and they kind of get into a whole standoff really, and they end up outside, and they kind of having this back and forth. Samuel Jackson and his crew is pretty much coming at DAP and his crew from the standpoint of like, we live here, we were born here, we gonna die here. Y'all just come here and then y'all think y'all better than us and everything. And then Dap is, his crew is like, look, we not like that. If you got some problems with people, from our school or whatever, the beef is with them, it's not with us. We not like that and everything. And the whole thing of, throwing the N-word around from Samuel L. Jackson and his crew. And I just like that kind of whole duality, because basically it's a conversation that realistically should be had amongst black men. And even though it's done in a certain type of way, but it is a real conversation of certain black men looking at other black men a certain type of way. But you should be able to have your point of view, but also to understand the other person's point of view. And the cherry on top of that is at the end of that scene when Dap, he gets up in Sam Jackson's face and tells him, like, you're not niggas. And is, like I say, it's a very powerful scene. And like I say, when you read between the lines of, like I say, when you get past kind of like the fact that Samuel L. Jackson crew, they kind of look like they like a low budget version of a 80s R&B group, really, or whatever. But when you get past kind of the aesthetic of how they look, and just like I said, you see from their point of view, and then you see it from Dap and his crew point of view, and just like I say, that ending of you're not niggas, and it's like message. But yeah, like I say, it's a fun movie overall, and it is trying to tell us a lot in that movie. The whole riff of light skin, dark skin, and even though they do it in a musical type way, but that's a real thing, and still to this day it's still a real thing of dark skin, light skin, and just how the fraternities and and belonging to a fraternity and all this type of stuff, and what it takes for someone if they want to join said fraternity. Me personally, I've never been a fraternity type person. Nothing against people who are, but that's never been my thing. And everything. But like I say, the movie does touch on a lot of different topics, and I feel like School Days in a lot of ways is a precursor to his next movie, which ironically, and I'll say this off the bat, I do feel like his next movie is arguably his best movie, just because of how it's constructed and how it plays out, and a lot of it to this day right now is very much important, and this movie could actually happen and take place right now. You could literally uproot the entire movie and bring it to 2025 and nothing changes for the most part. And I'm talking about 1989, Do the Right Thing, which Spike, again, he's in his movie, because early in his career, Spike was in his movies. He was in She's Gotta Have It, he's in School Days, and he's in Do the Right Thing, right off the bat. And I mean, this movie takes place, it's dubbed the hottest day of the year, in Bed-Stuy and everything, and how all of these people in this neighborhood, this community, how they come from different, races, religions, ethnicities, whatever. And it's the hottest day of the summer, and it's like everybody just trying to make it through the day, really. And it starts out one way, and by the time you get to the end, it's like there's been so much stuff built up through the course of this day, and it all comes to a head at Sal's Pizzeria, where Sal Pizzeria ends up getting burned down, and Radio Raheem ends up getting choked out and murdered in front of everybody. I mean, this movie has a great ensemble cast, and I think one of the things I really enjoy about this movie is the fact that it doesn't really play like a actual movie. It plays almost like a play itself. It's almost like a play. And And I don't know if that was Spike's intention necessarily, but the way it feels like it's a play, just in a movie form, or whatever. Because like I say, everything pretty much takes place in this small section of this area. And like I say, the cast is dope. I mean, you got Danny Aiello, you got basically got these three legendary actors in Danny Aiello, Ozzie Davis, Ruby Dee, that are featured throughout the movie. And I mean, Ozzie Davis' character as the mayor is like my favorite character in the movie, because even though he's this down bad drunk, but the whole scene with him and Mookie, where he just sitting there on the steps, Mookie's walking by, he's like, "Come here, Doc," and everything like that. And he's like, he said, "Only you gotta tell you one thing." He's like, "What's that?" "Always do the right thing." Like, that's it. I got it. I'm gone. And just him throughout the movie, just kind of, because people kind of look down on him throughout. I mean, you know that the man's been through some things. You don't know to the extent. I mean, there's the one scene where he kind of explains, like, when he's talking to the young people and telling them, like, you don't know what it's like, and you haven't experienced life to understand why I am the way I am and everything. And we really don't. I mean, we kind of get an idea, like, yeah, he probably was, young and hungry and had ambition, but then because life, sometimes, and how, he ended up down bad, and how we see him now and everything. But like I said, you got Danny Aiello as Sal, and he owns Sal Pizzeria. You got Giancarlo Esposito. I said Spike earlier. You got Bill Nunn again in another Spike Lee joint. John Turturro, Paul Benjamin, Frankie Faison, Robin Harris. I mean, as Sweet Dick Willie, right? The three of them sitting on that out there in that hot ass sun. It's like, good Lord, how the hell I'm surprised one of them didn't just fall over dead sitting out there in the heat. Spike's real sister, Joy, she's in it. Rick Aiello, Danny Aiello's son, he plays the officer. Matter of fact, he's the officer that kills Radio Raheem. Samuel L. Jackson is the DJ, Mr. Senior Love Daddy. Rosie Perez, and I mean, she's not in the movie itself a lot, but the one thing that you do remember of her in this movie is that opening dance number that she does with Public Enemy's Fight the Power playing, which is funny. Public Enemy and Fight the Power, that song and everything, it is much a character throughout this movie as the actual characters are. I mean, that is the song that Radio Raheem is blasting on his boombox as he's walking around carrying it, and everything. So it's very much a character in the movie also. And like I say, Martin Lawrence is in this movie. It's one of his earlier roles and everything. But like I say, it's a really good movie. It's a personal favorite of mine, but I do feel like it is arguably his best movie. And everything. Yeah, I just really love the movie a lot. And like I say, it's one that I try to revisit it at least twice a year. And everything. But yeah, I mean, because it pretty much, the social commentary of the movie, there's a lot of great performances in it. Hell, Frank Vincent, oh, stop fucking with the water now, and all that and everything. Like, just people just showing up, and everything. They might not have like a lot of screen time, but they just show up and you remember. I feel like if you watch this movie, there's at least 3 characters in the movie that you feel like personally, and everything. And like I say, just the fact that the movie is still very much relevant today as it was in 1989, if not even more so relevant, or whatever. So that's 1989 and everything. So we get to 1990 and we're talking about Mo the Better Blues, his first film with Denzel, his third film that features Samuel L. Jackson. And we're dealing with the blues and well, jazz music really. But it has like a little bluesy to it and everything, and it's just showing like musicians and you got the character of Bleak played by Denzel Washington, who is a really talented trumpet player, but also too he's a womanizer, and he has two women that he's dealing with, in which you have Joy Lee as Indigo, and then you have the great Cindy Williams as Clark, and just him dealing with those two relationships, as well as having to deal with his friend Giant, played by Spike. And I always tell people, like, the biggest takeaway from Mo Better Blues is your friends sometimes can be your downfall. And this movie is a prime example of that. If you've never watched Mo Better Blues, I highly recommend it. I mean, it is one of Denzel's best performances. Just seeing him just play this type of character, because you really don't get Denzel playing this particular type, because like I say, he's a womanizer and he's very self-absorbent in this movie. But reality comes crashing down on him very hard in this movie, thanks in large part to his friend. But this is another movie that has a really good cast. I mean, of course, Denzel's at the forefront of it, and I mentioned Joy Lee and Cindy Williams and Spike also. But you got Wesley Snipes, you got Giancarlo Esposito once again, Robin Harris as the club DJ. His character name is Butterbean at that, which is hilarious. Bill Nunn again is here, John Turturro, Dick Anthony Williams, good old the pimp, from the Mac that was going back and forth with Goldie. He's in this. Nicholas Turturro shows up, and everything. Charlie Murphy is also in this movie, but he doesn't have a lot of lines. But if you know Charlie Murphy, you know Charlie Murphy, right? And like I said, another movie that just has a really dope cast and some really good jazz music, and everything. Like I said, this is a movie that I really enjoy Spike, because again, he's paying tribute and homage to jazz music, and then of course you get a great song. You get two great songs from this soundtrack. Harlem Blues, which is sung by Cindy Williams, and then you have a jazz thing by Gangstar, which is like one of my favorite songs, and everything. So that's 1990. 1991, we get Jungle Fever, because around this time Spike is pretty much, he's kind of tapping into social comments. He's very socially conscious at this time, and social commentary on different things. So, I mean, Do the Right Thing is pretty much about, when you get a boiling pot of, different races together and living together, how do they come together and work together to go to a common goal, or do they end up crashing out against each other and Sal Pizzeria end up getting burned to the ground? But with Jungle Fever, we get something that was pretty much a hot topic, in the early 90s, which was interracial relationships, and how people deal with it, right? And so Jungle Fever, right? And we get Wesley Snipes is back in a Spike Lee joint. So we get two Wesley Snipes movies back to back. And he's pretty much like, he's the lead. You get Annabella Sciorra, she plays his love interest. Spike Lee is back again. Also got Ozzie Davis, Ruby Dee, Samuel L. Jackson as Gator, who's probably the most memorable character of the movie. And I'll talk a little bit more about that character in a minute. But we also have Lynetta McKee, John Turturro, Frank Vincent again, Halle Berry, who plays Gator's girlfriend in this. And like I say, it's just, it's one of those type of movies where, again, what might have been controversial at the time, but is something that still very relevant even right now. Interracial relationships and how you deal with, how you move, and everything. As we've kind of been seeing recent with how, especially athletes and how they are viewed, dealing with the fact that, well, the ones who end up with white girls, they kind of, act and move a certain type of way opposed to the ones that get with the black girls, and then the type of black girls they get with. And it's a whole thing or whatever. But I do feel like Jungle Fever is a movie that you could kind of take from 1991 and, uproot it to 2025, and you might tweak a few things, but again, the story is very much relevant and everything like that from that standpoint. Now, the other part is the whole thing with Gator being a crackhead and him, basically crashing out on his family, because him and Gator and Flipper are actually brothers, and then Ozzie Davis and Ruby Dee play their parents, and we see, that whole ending part with Gator when he goes to the house because he's high and everything, and he comes in and him and the dad get into it, and the dad end up shooting and killing him, which I don't know. I probably have to look to see, but this was always my interpretation, was that in a roundabout way, that was Spike's way of kind of putting out there what happened between Marvin Gaye and Marvin Gaye Sr. Because that's what happened. Marvin Gaye, him and his dad got into it and everything, and the dad ended up pulling out the gun and he shot him and he killed Marvin Gaye, right? And I always felt like that in some way was like putting that out, and as far in a form, a way of what happened between father and son, of Marvin Gaye and Marvin Gaye Sr. And everything. But the real star of this movie is Samuel L. Jackson as Gator. I know a lot of people look at, and rightfully so, I mean, they look at Pulp Fiction as being the movie that really kickstarts his career, which it does in a certain way. But I always feel like Jungle Fever is the movie that really kind of gets him going, because if you look at Sam Jackson's career real quick and everything, the fact that he's fresh out of rehab for being a drug addict himself, he's fresh out of rehab, and this is the movie that he does fresh out of rehab, and he's playing a drug addict and what he does with it. So it makes you wonder, like, how much of that was really acted and how much of that was him pulling from his real experience, being a drug addict and everything like that, right? But you look at the type of movies that he does after this. I mean, he shows up in Patriot Games. He shows up in Jurassic Park. As a matter of fact, he does Jurassic Park the year before he does Pulp Fiction. So, I mean, he was already on that trajectory. It's just Pulp Fiction is just like the movie that just really, really shows like, okay, no, we can bank on this dude, and look at where he is now all these years later. And I mean, he's still doing it, and he's still great at what he does, and everything. And like I say, I don't really watch Jungle Fever that much, like I do some of his earlier, like I don't revisit it as much like I do the Right Thing or School Days. I do, or even Mo Better Blues. I think I watch even Mo Better Blues a little bit more than I do Jungle Fever or whatever, and everything. But it is streaming, so who knows? Maybe I should watch it again. So that's 91, and then the next year we get Malcolm X. And okay, so this might be a little controversial with some stuff that I say about Malcolm X. Denzel Washington is absolutely phenomenal as Malcolm X. Malcolm Little / Malcolm X. This still is really truly the only biopic about Malcolm X. I mean, he's shown up in other films and everything like that. One Night in Miami being one of them. Mario Van Peebles plays him in the movie Ali. So there, like I say, there are instances where in real life biopics or whatever, Malcolm X does show up. But as far as telling his entire life story from when he was Malcolm Little, the street hustler, to when he goes to prison, when he links up with Herbert and Elijah Muhammad and everything, and he converts over to Islam, and then he becomes Malcolm X. He becomes the leader of the nation, and he goes through all this stuff, and of course the infamous "get your hands out of my pocket," and you know how it ends there. But it's a polarizing movie, and I do have certain issues with Spike's direction of the movie and everything. It's still a phenomenal movie. I like I say, it is, and I respect the hell out of it. And like I say, Denzel should have won the Oscar for Malcolm X. There's no question about that. I don't see how anybody can argue that he shouldn't have won it, but he didn't. And I can, if you know how the Academy kind of moves, you know why they didn't, allow him to win, and everything. But at the same time, I feel like because of how Malcolm X, the movie, was treated at the Oscars, that left a sour taste in Spike Lee's mouth. And of course, this is a few years after Do the Right Thing got snubbed at the Oscars for Driving Miss Daisy, which Spike, he was a little bitter about that too, but I think he was even more bitter about what happened with Malcolm X. So yeah, after this is where he kind of starts to, he kind of, I would say professionally, he kind of goes away from what he was known necessarily for. And he kind of reverts back to, his auteur phase, if you will. Because 1994, 2 years later, 1994, he does Crooklyn. Now, I've never really watched Crooklyn from beginning. I've only seen bits and pieces, and I know it's a movie I should watch, and everything. But Crooklyn is basically a semi-autobiography of Spike's growing up in the 1970s as a kid in Brooklyn, with the family and everything. Delroy Lindo is in here. Alfred Woodard also is here. And everything. And it's just, pretty much, experiencing this family or whatever. Like I say, it's not a movie that I really watch or whatever. I probably should watch it. And everything. You know what? It's something, it definitely will be a movie that I watch before this year is over. And everything. And I will do my best to remember to, after I watch it, to actually talk about it on the podcast episode around the time wherever I do watch it, and everything like that. But like I say, it's a coming of age story, and you would have, and the reason why I say that Spike, he kind of reverts back to his auteur phase is because you would think after Malcolm X, he might have went a different route, but he didn't. He kind of, said, you know what, I'm gonna tell a personal story for me and everything. And, kind of mid 90s Spike is a little different from late 80s, early 90s Spike, and everything. And like I say, I feel like it's because of what happened with Malcolm X is why he kind of, let me kind of shift gears to a degree. Since you, the Academy, since you, Hollywood, don't want to acknowledge me, I'm going to kind of go away from even doing films that that I think that will even be on your radar. So that's why we get Crooklyn. All right. And then a year later we get Clockers, which I've only seen Clockers once, and that was a long time ago, so I don't remember it like that. And everything, but still, it's another great cast. He's working with Delroy Lindo again. Got Mekhi Phifer. Harvey Keitel shows up here as well. Again, he's working with John Turturro. You got Isaiah Washington. You got Keith David. And I always like the Keith David name in this movie is Andre the Giant. And it makes me wonder, okay, was he is he named after Andre the Giant, really? Or whatever. Like I said, it's one of those movies again, he's kind of going to his auteur phase. Or I should say reverting back to that to a degree. I mean, he's always was in his work, but he's kind of really going back into that and getting away from the big Hollywood projects. So 1996, he does Girl 6. And this is part of a string of movies that he does throughout his career that I refer to. Spike is in his filthy bag. And Girl 6, I mean, we're dealing with a woman who becomes a phone sex operator because she fails as an actress. So it's like, well, I'm gonna just use my voice, and she becomes a phone sex operator. And you have Teresa Randall as Girl 6, but I mean, this movie it features a really good cast. I mean, you got Isaiah Washington, who's here. Spike Lee is also in it. Jennifer Lewis is in it. Debbie Mazar shows up, and she has been in a few Spike movies prior as well. So one thing about Spike, he kind of tends to like to work with the same people, and everything, because you start to kind of see some similar names show up. Mostly New York actors, but actors that are very good and fit within Spike's universe in a lot of ways. Girl 6, like I say, it's an interesting movie. And it kind of makes you wonder why he wanted to make that movie and everything, but he did it. Like I say, it's a very interesting movie and everything. Also in 1996, even though this is not a movie, but famously he directs not one but two versions of Michael Jackson's "They Don't Care About Us" music video. Of course, the original version took place in prison, and they did not like this. So they decided, all right, let's flip it around. They end up going, I forgot exactly where they went, but they went to to another country and everything, and had the kids and everything, and showing by "They Don't Really Care About Us." So you got two different versions of this music video, and everything. I do kind of lean more towards the prison version because it was very much hitting on what Michael was talking about in the video, in the song, I should say, and it hit. I think it hit just a little too hard, so they didn't like that. And I mean, 1996, Michael didn't have that same pull as 1991 Michael about Remember the Time. So, yeah, they kind of had to, okay, well, we're going to just kind of flip it a little bit. And we still got a great music video. Both videos are great in two different ways, and you can interpret the song in two different ways based off of the videos for it. So also in 1996, he directs Get on the Bus, which is about a group of African-American men who are traveling to Washington, D.C. for the Million Man March. And we just get to spend a lot of time with this group of men that's on this bus, and, why they're going to D.C. and just experience their life experience, their different experiences and everything. Another great cast. Ozzie Davis is back. We got Charles S. Dutton here, Andre Brower, Richard Belzer, Thomas Jefferson Byrd, who has shown up in quite a few of his movies. Albert Hall once again, Hill Harper, Harry Lennox, Bernie Mac as Jay, by the way. His character name is Jay. Wendell Pierce, Roger Guinevere Smith, also again another regular of Spike Lee's cast of actors that he likes to work with. Isaiah Washington again, and everything. And like I said, it's a good movie, but it is very much a black movie. I don't think this movie was made with the intention of saying, hey, I want white people to watch my movie. I really don't. Yeah, I mean, and like I said, this is just me talking from my personal standpoint. I don't know anything of what Spike was thinking, just how I see it based off of how the subject matter and what it's about. I don't think Spike went out of his way to say, hey, I want white people to watch my movie. I just want, my people to watch. And basically it's conversations and points of views and different philosophies from different types of black men, and why they are going to DC for the Million Man March and everything. I enjoy the movie. I mean, it's one of his that I don't revisit as often as some of the others and everything, but I do enjoy it. And it's not streaming anywhere, but I'm glad I actually own it. Is one of a few of Spike Lee movies that I actually own and everything like that. So next we get Four Little Girls. And of course, this is, it's a documentary actually about what happened in 1963 with the Ku Klux Klan, bombing, Birmingham Baptist Church, and 4 little girls who actually died in it. So again, Spike is pretty much tripling and doubling down on, where he wants to be and the way he's feeling, basically. That's how the type of movies and things that he was doing at this time is how he was feeling, how he probably was dealing with still the Academy. You screwed me with Malcolm X. So I'm doing things that is very much things that I know that you are not even looking at or whatever. So his next movie is 1998, He Got Game, movie I actually reviewed on the show. Again, and what's interesting about it, this is his second Denzel Washington movie. So the first being Mo Better Blues, which is 1991. And here we are, basically 7 years later is when Denzel comes back into Spike's universe and everything. But by this point, he's, Denzel Washington. Because 1991, he's still, he's Denzel Washington. Okay, yeah, he won Best Supporting Actor for Glory, but he's still Denzel. By this point, he's full on Denzel, mega superstar Washington. And, I mean, He Got Game. Like I said, we got Denzel as Jake Shuttlesworth. We got Ray Allen as Jesus. Rosario Dawson playing a no good in this movie. We got Alice herself from the Resident Evil movies. Mila Jovovich. She's here. You got Hill Harper. Ned Beatty. Jim Brown. Bill Nunn again is here. A lot of regulars of Spike Lee are showcased throughout this movie, and everything. Rick Fox, he shows up here also. But one thing I really enjoy about He Got Game, and I think I spoke about this in that episode, is just how, this relationship between this father and son. That is the core of this movie. And just how Jesus, he's this, super talented basketball player, high school basketball player, not even in college, he's high school. And it's just about, okay, he pretty much has the weight of the world on his shoulders. Like the decision that he makes of where he wants to go to school is literally going to, change his future, and everything. And how everyone pretty much wants a piece of him. And even though Jake in a way is, trying to get a piece of him, but at the end of the day, he's still his father. And yes, the whole family tragedy of the fact that Jake is in prison for accidentally killing Jesus's mother, Jake's wife, and everything. And the fact that he's allowed 1 week, out of prison to try to convince his son to go to the university where the governor wants him to go. And if he does, that will get time off of Jake's sentence. Not that he'll get released, but time off of his sentence. And just how that final basketball scene between Jake and Jesus, they're playing basketball, but they're playing for a lot more than just, it's more than just a game. And Denzel, of course, is talking trash throughout the whole thing. And Ray Allen is pretty much just being Ray Allen, or whatever. And I do feel like it's one of Denzel's better performances. It's more of it's kind of an underrated performance, because it would have been interesting if anybody else would have played that role, how they would have portrayed the character. But you actually do feel sympathy a little bit for Jake, especially the whole subplot with him and Mila Jovovich's character of Dakota, and how it's basically two broken people, finding each other in a way, because she's a prostitute basically and everything, but that's not the life that she wanted. And just like Jake didn't want to be in prison for accidentally murdering his wife or whatever, and losing his family altogether. But here are two broken people, and it's like, even though both kind of put on facades in front of other people, but it's like with each other, they are able to take off those invisible masks in a way. And I thought that their relationship in the movie is very good. And I like how Spike even, how he even shoots this movie. I mean, it's probably I feel like this, and I don't think I know I did not say this on the He Got Game episode, but I do feel like He Got Game is probably one of Spike's best shot movies. Like, there's certain shots in this movie that just look great. Especially the night scenes, because of how the lights and everything playing. Everything is kind of overly bright in a way, but it's almost like they're almost like moving pictures. In a way, like the scenes with Lala and Jesus at Coney Island or whatever, and them sitting on the bench. That is a great shot, and everything. And then the apartment where Jake lives, and just how that neon light outside is always shining, and how how it shines in his apartment and everything. Just the way it's filmed it has this gritty, kind of sad, somber look, which kind of is basically what Jake is in a way. It's almost like the epitome of what he is, with how he's living. The way his room is framed, it kind of represents him in a lot of ways. But yeah, He Got Game. I say it's a very, I won't say it's a great movie, but it is a good watch, especially when you're talking about fathers and sons, and everything. 1999. Okay, this is another Spike Lee movie that I did. And this is another filthy bag of Spikes, because I need somebody to tell me exactly what was he thinking by doing this particular story. And I'm talking about Summer of Sam. And it's not even that he does a movie that is surrounding the Son of Sam killer in the summer of 77 in New York. It's not even that part. It's all the other stuff that he has going on in this movie. And I'm talking about, well, first let me just talk about this cast, because you have John Leguizamo, you have Adrian Brody, Mira Sorvino, Jennifer Esposito. Also you have Anthony LaPaglia, Roger Guinevere Smith is back once again. Ben Gazzara, good old Brad Wesley himself from Roadhouse is here. I mean, this movie is filled with a lot of people that you know of. And like I said, it's a filthy movie because it's not really so much about the Son of Sam killer. It's more so about the fact that John Leguizamo character of Vinny is basically a whore. You know, he's married to Mira Sorvino, who looks amazing in this freaking movie. But he cheats on her religiously, and he's like a sex fiend. But him being a sex fiend is what gets him kind of caught up in a way of he feels that the Son of Sam killer is coming after him because he's actually saw him or whatever. And then you have Adrian Brody, who's like this punk rocker type, you know, even though he's, you know, this guy that's from Brooklyn, but he talks with a fake British accent. He's a musician, but he also works in like sex clubs and stuff like this. So there's a lot of sex in this freaking movie. Summer of Sam is a choice. And I think I even talked about it on the episode when we did it. But Summer of Sam is definitely a choice movie. And it is the second of what I like to refer as Spike's filthy bag and everything. So that's how he ends the 90s. He ends the 90s with Summer of Sam, but he kicks off the 2000s with two very different types of films. So he has two things that come out in 2000. He has the original Kings of Comedy, which of course is the stand-up comedy movie with Bernie Mac, Steve Harvey, D.L. Hughley, and Cedric the Entertainer. Of course, people look at this as being, you know, where Bernie Mac pretty much because at this point, Bernie Mac was, he was in movies, he was guest appearing on TV shows, but of the four, he was the only one that did not have a TV show of his own. But after this, he gets his TV show, which becomes like one of the best shows on TV, and it's on Fox Network at that. And people like to pinpoint to this as being the beginning of the end of the friendship between Steve Harvey and Bernie Mac, in a lot of ways, right? And then of course he goes on to do the Ocean's movie, and we know from there. But I mean, I can't really say too much anything like indifferent about this, because it's just basically Spike Lee is directing a comedy stand-up and everything. That was a tour that these guys were doing, and he just filmed two different nights of said comedy stand-up and everything, right? So, and of course, I mean, Bernie Mac, a star is born in this, because not only is Bernie Mac the best of the four, but he goes on last, and it ends with him, you know, and everything like that. And of course, he's the reason why they get their standing ovation and everything. So the movie that he actually films in, he has come out in 2000, Bamboozled, which that is it was a choice, and it's very much, it's a satire, but it's also a critique of how black people are viewed in entertainment, and what is our tolerance when it comes to certain entertainment when it's regarding us. And even if it's something that we know technically should not be viewed as positive, but somehow it is very popular, even though it is not a good representation of us. And this movie does kind of delve into that. And it's like the ugly side of, you know, entertainment, basically. And this cast is very interesting, because for the most part, the main players here are people that were not, what you say, you wouldn't necessarily think of seeing them in a Spike Lee joint. And I'm talking about Damon Wayans is your main character. Savion Glover, famous tap dancer, extraordinaire and everything. He acts, in a few things, but mainly tap dancing is his thing. He's actually one of my favorite tap dancers, and everything like that. He's in this. Jada Pinkett Smith is here. Michael Rappaport being a filthy no good, and everything. Tommy Davidson also shows up here and everything. Like I said, well, you wouldn't necessarily think of seeing them in a Spike Lee movie, but I mean, they're here. And the only thing I will say about Bamboozle, because I've actually watched it twice. The only thing I would say about Bamboozle is that it was definitely a choice, and I do feel like Spike was really making a critique about certain things. In this movie about how we as black people are viewed, in entertainment, whether it's TV shows, whether it's movies, whether it's music. He was definitely trying to make a critique about that with this movie. Now, I know it's a very fine line that he kind of walks in this movie, and I know the ending is always kind of like, what the fuck, but is definitely worth a watch. I would tell anybody, if you go through Spike Lee movies, I would say Bamboozle is definitely very much one movie of his that you definitely should watch. All right, so we fast forward to 2 years later, 2002. I'm talking about 25th Hour, a movie that is very much underrated. And just a little bit change of pace for what Spike had been doing for almost a decade, and everything. And the cast for this is a cast that you wouldn't necessarily think about being in a Spike Lee movie. This is like one of the few times also where Spike doesn't really have a black centric heavy led cast either. Summer Sam is another one. 25th Hour is also one, because you have Ed Norton as Monty, the main character. You have Barry Pepper. Yeah, Philip Seymour Hoffman. Rosario Dawson, she's back again in a Spike Lee joint. You have Anna Paquin. Brian Cox is also here. Isaiah Whitlock, Mr. Shit himself, is also in this as Agent Flood, who actually shows up again in a Spike Lee movie as Agent Flood. But yeah, it's a very interesting movie. It's a good movie, in my opinion. It's probably like one of Ed Norton's better performances, in my opinion, where Monty is basically spending the last 24 hours of his freedom before he goes to prison, and he's just kind of thinking about his life and how did he end up here, and what is it going to be like 7 years later, is what he's kind of thinking about, because he's going to prison for 7 years, and he's just spending the last 24 hours of his freedom with his friends, and a lot of emotions come out at different points. And of course, the whole thing of how and why he actually is even going to prison. And when you find out why he's going to prison, it's like, damn, like really? Like this person is the reason why you're going to prison. But like I say, this isn't a typical Spike Lee movie, which is a good thing, especially like I say, after what he had been doing for almost the past decade, for him to kind of change the pace a little bit with something like this. And it's like, okay, this is interesting. It's different. It's something different from him. And he would start to kind of do this. He would sprinkle movies like this in going forward. So speaking of going forward, you would think he would follow 25th Hour with something maybe similar-ish. No, he doesn't, because 2 years later in 2004, he does She Hate Me, which again, Spike is in his filthy bag because the premise of this movie is kind of insane, where you have this lead character of John Henry, Jack, if you will, played by Anthony Mackie, who he works at this firm and he ends up getting fired from his job. So he needs money, and his ex-girlfriend, who is now a lesbian, her and her girlfriend pretty much, they want to have a kid, so they decide to pay him to get one of them pregnant. And through the course of this, he pretty much becomes a sperm donor to lesbians. And instead of them, doing it the scientific way of, going to, a doctor and them taking his sperm and putting it in one of the women's eggs and everything, and they have no. We don't do it the scientific way. We do it the old school way, because he's literally having sex with these women. And yes, that is wild as it sounds. And this is a movie of his that I actually owns. So what's that kind of say about me? Maybe I'm filthy. I don't know. But at the same time, it's a wild premise. And also they kind of sprinkle in about the Watergate scandal with Frank Wills and everything like this, and how it compares to John Henry in current day, dealing with the fallout from what happened with him being fired from the company that he worked for and everything. It's just, there's a lot going on in this movie, but the most memorable thing is the fact that the main character is having sex with lesbians and they're paying him to get them pregnant so they can have kids. And the end of the movie is, I think he had it was like 20 some kids that he ended up fathering. And it's like, what? And it's like I said, I don't know what Spike was thinking with this one. But the cast for this movie, I mean, like I said, I mentioned Anthony Mackie. You got Kerry Washington, Ellen Barkin, Monica Bellucci, Jim Brown, Ozzie Davis, once again, Brian Dennehy. You got Woody Harrelson, who plays the boss, actually, of Anthony Mackie's character. And then, like I said, Q-Tip, and his character name is Veda Huff, which actually, I don't know, for some reason I like that name, Veda Huff, for whatever reason. John Turturro again, also Chiwetel Ejiofor, he's here as Frank Wills. And as I mentioned, that we would get Agent Flood once again, played by Mr. Isaiah Whitlock. He returns here also. So that's how you know that She Hate Me and 25th Hour exist in the same universe, because this character kind of ties both movies together. And yeah, like I say, it's a interesting watch. And I still try to figure out what exactly is this? What was Spike trying to tell us or try to say with this movie? I really don't know. So we fast forward to 2006, and we are back with Denzel. So this is a third collaboration of Denzel with Spike Lee. 2006 Inside Man, which is basically probably, I would definitely put Inside Man in Spike Lee's top 5, for me at least, top 5 favorite films of his, because it's very much different from anything else that he's really done, because it's a heist movie, it's a hostage movie, it's one of those types, and it's very much different from what Spike had been doing before. And just the way that the story plays out and how clever these bank robbers are, with the fact that these people, they're robbing bank, their faces is always covered, but once they get the hostages into the rooms, the actual robbers themselves, with the exception of the main robber, and I will talk about the main cast in a second, but the fact that they actually blend in with the actual hostage, so people will actually think that these people are hostages as well, because hey, I saw that guy sitting in the room with me also, so he's not a robber. And then he kind of looks similar to another character, person that's in the room, just like the woman that is part of the robbers and everything. She looks and has a similar body type to another hostage also. So, but I saw her too, so there's no way she's a part of this either, right? And everything. But it's a very good movie. Like I said, it's one of his best movies in my opinion. And again, I mean, you have Denzel Washington, you got Clive Owen here. Again, a cast that is not really Spike Lee norm, not the norm for Spike Lee, with the exception of Denzel. But like I said, you have Clive Owen, you have Jodie Foster, Christopher Plummer, William Dafoe, Chiwetel Ejiofor is back playing. He's actually Denzel's partner here. You have Kim Director, James Ransom. Like I say, pretty much like character actors that you've seen in other stuff. They show up throughout this movie and everything. And the way this whole thing plays out, and the fact that Clive Owen's character is this mastermind or whatever, it's just a really great. I feel like in a lot of ways, Inside Man is almost like a mix of taking a Pelham 1, 2, 3, the original, not the remake that Denzel was in, but the original with Robert Shaw and Walter Matthau. It's like a mix of that with Dog's Day Afternoon, because it does become like a media circus in a way, and everything. But yeah, that's Inside Man. So he ends up doing When the Levees Break, a documentary about what happened in New Orleans, Louisiana, New Orleans, after Hurricane Katrina. But the next movie that he does comes in 2008, a movie that I have mixed feelings about, only because of comments that Spike Lee made regarding Steven Spielberg and Clint Eastwood and their war movies, and why black soldiers were not featured in their World War II movies. So he decided to make his own World War II movie, but in some ways, Miracle at St. Anna is somewhat like Saving Private Ryan to a degree. Just the whole subplot, is different, and how it connects to, current day opposed to everything that's happened in World War II with the soldiers. It's not a bad movie or anything. It's just, I don't know. Spike, he was, like I say, he was feeling a certain type of way, regarding those filmmakers and their films and how they got so much praise, but there was a lack of color in them, and everything. Granted, I've never really watched Flags of My Father, but I do watch and I enjoy Saving Private Ryan. Thin Red Line is another one I really like also. And who knows, maybe I don't know. Thin Red Line, that's a hard movie to try to review, but I don't know. I might try it at some point. But the cast for this movie is a very good cast. You have Derek Luke, who at the time was, he was a on the come up black actor, and everything. Michael Ealy, another one, was on the come up in 2008. Laz Alonso, Omar Benson Miller, aka Cornbread from Sinners, is also here. John Turturro shows up. Got Joseph Gordon-Levitt in this. John Leguizamo, Kerry Washington shows up also. And then one particular person that shows up just being an absolute no good. You got Walton Goggins. Yes, good old baby Billy himself shows up being a no good that shows up at one point during the movie. Yeah, it's a movie like I say, I've watched Miracle at St. Anna a few times, but I don't think doing a war movie is not really Spike's. I wouldn't say it's his strong suit necessarily. And at certain points, I'm trying to figure out if the movie knows if it wants to be a World War II movie or if it wants to be something else. And that's the issue that I kind of have with the movie, is like, do it really know what it is? And did he really know what it was after a certain point? 2009, we get Michael Jackson's "This Is It" music video and everything, of course, because 2009 is when Michael passed away and all of that. So he did do that, and I just wanted to spotlight that because he did have a working relationship, friendship with Michael Jackson. So I'll throw that in there. 2012 is the next time Spike actually directs a movie with Red Hook Summer. Which, I've never watched Red Hook Summer, so I can't even really speak on it. And everything. But it is streaming, so that's another one I'm gonna add. So Crooklyn and Red Hook Summer. Those are two Spike Lee movies that I would definitely watch before the year is out. So his next movie is 2013. He decides to do a remake of an early 2000s Korean film, and I'm talking about Old Boy, and everything. And I remember when it first said that Spike, I was like, I don't know if Spike can do this, and because I knew what that movie was and is, and I was like, I don't know if Spike has what it takes really to. That's not really in his wheelhouse. Because one thing about Spike, even though I do enjoy quite a few of his movies, but when it comes to certain types of movies, and even with Inside Man, I think his directing style is not very. I don't want to. He doesn't move the camera or put it in a lot of favorable positions when it comes to the actors, and I'll just say it like that. But he does Old Boy, and it is not very good. And the fact that granted, you're doing an American version, so of course it's going to take place in America, but it just didn't feel like the original movie. It didn't have the same feel to it. And even though he got Josh Brolin to play the main character, you got Elizabeth Olsen, you got Samuel L. Jackson plays a character that's pretty much made up for the American version, and everything. It's not. I feel like he made a mistake by even making this movie. But like I said, again, that's just how I feel. Now, there could be some people who might champion the movie. I'm not sure, but me personally, I feel like that was a mistake to touch Old Boy. So the next movie he does is another pseudo remake, and I'm talking about The Sweet Blood of Jesus, which is a reimagining version of Ganja and Hess. Now, I am a fan of Ganja and Hess, and even though I have not watched The Sweet Blood of Jesus for the fact that I'm such a huge Ganja and Hess fan, but I've never heard anyone actually speak favorable of this movie, and you can't even really stream or find it anywhere. So that kind of tells you everything you need to know. Yeah, so that's all I'm gonna say about The Sweet Blood of Jesus and everything. So the next film that he actually does is 2015 Chirac, and again, this is another movie of his where it's like, okay, this was a choice. and everything. This is another movie that I felt that was very polarizing, and is, even though it's supposed to not be taken too serious because it's supposed to be like satire, but I'm not sure if people really wanted necessarily this from him at that particular point in time. Maybe something a little different, but we got this. And the cast for this is, I mean, one thing about Spike is that he can give you a dope cast. You gonna get a dope cast in a Spike Lee movie. That's never really been in question. But I kind of do think that the majority of these actors were not used favorably in this movie. But you have Nick Cannon, you got Tiana Parrish, you got Wesley Snipes, you got Angela Bassett. Samuel L. Jackson returns to the fold with Spike Lee. You got John Cusack, Jennifer Hudson, David Patrick Kelly, Dave Chappelle, Steve Harris. You know, so like I say, you have a really good, great, you know, ensemble cast. It's just again, kind of like old boy. I don't think he should have really made this movie. So after this, we get a movie that gets him back into the good graces of Hollywood, and I'm talking about Blackkklansman, which came out 2018. And this movie stars John David Washington, Adam Driver, Topher Grace, Alec Baldwin, Isaiah Whitlock is back, and everything. And this movie is based on the true story of Ron Stallworth, who was a black police officer, and he, through phone conversations, became very friendly with the Grand Wizard himself, good old David Duke. And to infiltrate the Ku Klux Klan, they use a white guy, of course, because Ron Stallworth is a black man, so clearly he was not going. But he used on the phone, it is Ron, but then in person, it is Adam Driver's character, a Flip, who infiltrates the Ku Klux Klan and everything like that. I mean, John David is great in the movie. Adam Driver is great in the movie. Even Topher Grace, who's playing David Duke, is great because it's very non-Topher like, and you don't really see Topher so much in the performance. You see the character that he's playing of David Duke. But the biggest thing that comes from this movie is the fact that Spike finally gets what he has been seeking for the most part, and that is an Oscar, even though it's for best adapted screenplay. But he finally gets that Oscar that he's, you know, the actual Oscar. He actually wins an Oscar for the first time, even though he was nominated for Best Director for this as well. And he didn't win that year, but he was happy with the fact that he did win an Oscar, right? So, and you could tell that he was actually kind of happy, and it almost felt like they somewhat righted or wrong with him for how they did Malcolm X and everything all those years earlier. But yeah, Blackkklansman is definitely is a movie of his that people should check out. And even I would say check out the real story about Ron Stallworth and how that whole thing went down. Because I mean, the movie, of course, is somewhat loosely based on the real story. I mean, it's not 100% accurate, but at the same time, it's still just insane that you had a black man on the phone and then the white guy showing up, and they basically had to play two different parts of being the same person. And they always had to be on the same page at the same time, which is insanity when you really think about it. So that's 2018. But at the same time, around this time, he does the TV series of She's Gotta Have It on Netflix. He actually directed 19 episodes of the show and everything. So that was pretty much something that he did. He directed the entire series, really. I don't know why I said 19 episodes as if there was more, but he directed all 19 episodes of She's Gotta Have It. And as I said earlier, I never watched, because I've never watched the movie, so I didn't watch the TV show either, and everything, which I might have to put that on the list to get, off my watch list. So that's 2018. And let's say She's Gotta Have It one from 2017 to 2019. So 2020, he does The Five Bloods. And this is another Netflix movie. And this movie has a really good cast also, as you have Delroy Lindo, Jonathan Majors, Clark Peters, Norm Lewis, Isaiah Whitlock. Those are your main cast. And it's basically about a bunch of friends who, they're kind of remembering what it was back in Vietnam, and they remember their fallen, their fallen squad leader, who was played by the late Chadwick Boseman, who this was like one of his final roles and everything. And it's interesting how his role in this movie is very much how he was when it came to Wakanda Forever, how he kind of just loomed over the movie. And even though he's in this movie, but he's not in it that much, but his character very much, his presence is felt a lot throughout the movie and everything. But the real star of this movie is Delroy Lindo, and how he did not get nominated for this, because the man is a damn menace throughout this movie. And the fact that his character is a black Republican, and they actually called him on his nonsense quite a few times throughout the movie. And he has a few crash out moments in this movie, which is just insane. But it's Delroy how you've never really seen him before. But everyone in this movie is really good. And the fact that the five main characters are all named after the original five members of the Temptations, and when things go down, the fact that Otis, played by Clark Peters, is the only one left standing, which is interesting, like how they decide to do that and everything. But yeah, it's an interesting movie, and I feel like Spike was very much in his bag when he made this movie. It's a really good movie, character-driven movie, because it's dealing with, PTSD, is dealing with, loss of a friend, is coming to terms with different, life situations and everything like that. Yeah, it's very much worth a watch. So the next movie, well, actually, that is actually the last movie that he does before his next film that comes out later this year, The Highest to Lowest, which is also another remake, which again pairs him with Denzel Washington. So yeah, that's the rundown of Spike Lee's career, his filmography, how I feel about a lot of his films and everything. I think that he has a unique style, and if you watch enough of his movies, you do kind of start to notice certain trademarks. Of course, that whole dolly shot that he does in some movies, it works perfectly, and then there's a few. Inside Man is one where it does not work. It was kind of pointless to throw it in there. Of course, you're gonna get like scenes of an actor like just talking directly to the camera. The direct dialogue to the camera is something that you get with Spike quite a bit. And then, like I say, the different color that he will do in movies or whatever. I mean, those are like standout things when you watch him as a filmmaker, that you kind of notice over time and everything. And then, of course, you know what you're getting with a Spike Lee movie for the most part. That is definitely going to be some social commentary, racial, tension issues are going to be throughout, depending on the story. And I would say this: one of the biggest things is always about community and how it affects the entire village, or the main characters of said village are affected. That's something that you always kind of get throughout with Spike. And then, of course, you're always going to have some jazz. I mean, Terrence Blanchard, a lot of his music, with pairing with Spike. Early on, of course, you had, like I say, Gang Starr with a jazz thing, and then, of course, Public Enemy, Fight the Power, and then later with He Got Game soundtrack. So you're always going to get a blend of something as far as musically when it comes to Spike and his movies, which I've always enjoyed, and always enjoyed like the musical choices that he put throughout his movie. And then also too, looking at how Spike himself, he's influenced, quite a few people. Because you're not going to tell me that Spike Lee is not he wasn't an influence on John Singleton. You're not going to tell me that he is not somewhat of an influence on Ryan Coogler, or whatever. Even Jordan Peele, to a degree, he's an influence. You can kind of tell like certain filmmakers that he is a influence on, or whatever, and how he helped, in a lot of ways. He took a lot of lumps in order for directors who came after him, like Singleton, like Fuqua, like Jordan Peele, like Ryan Coogler, just to name a few. Like, he took some lumps in order for them to, get to where they got to, in a lot of ways. And, he's gonna throw in the social commentary, and everything. And sometimes, sometimes it can be a little heavy-handed. I will admit that, from certain aspects of his films, it can be very heavy-handed. And I think that's that sometimes can turn people off a little bit. But when it's done right, it's done right. Like Do the Right Thing is done right. Jungle Fever is done right, and everything. But in certain cases, it can always be like a head scratcher, like Bamboozle, and everything. Even Miracle at St. Anna, to a degree, is kind of like, I get it, but at the same time, maybe if that was more of a focus throughout the movie, opposed to them being in this little village in Italy, and then you kind of throw that in there, and it's like, okay, but whatever. And then also too, like I said very earlier on, he's a very controversial figure. He has no problem, framing things a certain way or telling his story a certain type of way. And even if it gets uncomfortable as far as the subject matter, and everything. And then also too, comments that Spike has made, like how he went after Spielberg and Clint Eastwood because their war movies were so white. So I'm going to make my own, and everything. Things that he said about Tyler Perry, which I actually agree with. What he said about it. He probably like, oh, well, what did he say about Tyler Perry? All I would say, I'm not going to get into that on this episode talking about it. So I would just say, just look up Spike Lee, Tyler Perry, and then I will say buffoonery coonery. And because if you know, you know. But anyway, like I say, he has no problem speaking his mind, and he stands on his convictions, for the most part, especially when it comes to his movies and things like that. Now, I did not agree with him when he tried to sue Spike TV because they were calling themselves Spike, and he was like, oh, y'all using my name. And it's like, Spike is not your real name, that's your nickname. But yeah, and people who don't know, that really was a thing, that he really was going after Spike TV, formerly known as TNN at the time, but he was trying to go after them for using the name Spike TV. So before I actually get up out of here, I'm going to say my personal top 3 Spike Lee movies. So in order, I'm going to go from 3 to 1. So at number 3, I will say 25th Hour. Number 2, I will say Mo Better Blues. And number 1 is going to be Do the Right Thing. So those are my personal top 3 favorites of Spike. Like I say, that's just top 3. Now, I do have more, but like I said, I'm just only doing 3. So those are my top 3. And I would love to know what you guys think. Like, what for anyone who's watched enough Spike Lee movies, like, what are your top 3 personal favorites? Not necessarily, it don't have to be his best, but just personal favorites of his. Of course, you can email me at jmovietalk. That's jmovietalk@gmail.com, or you can hit me up on Twitter under jmovietalk over there, or on Instagram at jmt podcast. Let me know what your top 3 personal favorites. And also for anyone who's listening on YouTube, you can comment down below what your personal top 3 favorite Spike Lee joints are. And for anyone who does leave comments or whatever, I will definitely discuss them on the next episode or whatever. So yeah, that's pretty much it for this episode. I want to thank everyone for listening to me talk about Spike Lee, kind of run through his filmography. Like I said, I would love to know what you guys' personal top 3 is. Any other Spike Lee comments that anyone has, feel free. As long as it's respectful, whatever. Don't come with any nonsense if you do reply or whatever. But yeah, that's pretty much for this episode and everything. Of course, you can find all of the Movie Talk episodes a part of the TV Zone Podcast Network. Wherever you listen to your favorite podcast, just type in TV Zone Podcast Network and you find all the Movie Talk episodes as well as the other shows a part of the network. And like I say, also, if you're listening on YouTube, you make sure you subscribe, like, comment, share with your friends, your family, whoever. Let them know about the podcast. Everything like that. So that is all for episode 343. I will be back for episode 344 to get into talking about summer blockbusters, because that is the overall theme of this month, summer blockbusters. And what better way to kick off talking about summer blockbusters than to talk about one of the biggest summer blockbusters. I'm talking about 1993's Jurassic Park. That is a movie that I have not watched from beginning to end in a very long time, so I'm very much looking forward to talking about that movie on the podcast. So again, thank you guys for listening. I will catch you guys next time, and peace.